Hello.
Hello.
Hello. If you have listened to this podcast before and this is like not the first one you're listening to and you like it, and maybe tell your famous journalist friend or your influencer friends or your TikTok famous person or just someone that might tell other people about it so that we can grow, because we love growing. All humans love growth at the expense of all else. We're not really growing at the expense of anything, I don't think, at this stage. So help us grow. And then from Ivanka's corner, we have a promotion.
Today I'm going to promote Brighton Natural Health Centre. .org.uk, where you can go and do some nice classes, things like meditation, qigong, yoga, Pilates, dance, that kind of thing, things to make you feel good. And you can dial in from anywhere in the world now because the internet exists.
Sweet.
Which is lovely. Do that. Go and to Brighton Natural Health Centre. Yes.
.co.uk.
.org.
Right.
It's a charity.
It's an org. It's a .org. Mine's not a .org. Good to hear.co.uk. Go over there. Buy my stuff. Have a look around. Dismiss the pop-up. It's brilliant. Good to hear.co.uk. Please don't make me go back to contracting. Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly podcast where we invent cutting-edge new terminology for today's crazy world. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
This week we're inventing a crazy term. We were sort of having a conversation about some things we were thinking about, and we came up with the subject expertise paralysis. What does that sound like? What does that mean? It's this effect that the more you know about something, the more difficult you find to say something clear or to take an action around it. So while on the one hand we have Donald Trump saying the first thing that comes into his head is like, disinfectant cleans worktops, so obviously it must clean bodies as well of viruses, because that's how science works. And just saying that, and then you don't hear from the scientists who actually know something about it, because they're like, oh, well, the fact's all in, the data's not in, it's going to take 5 years. So all you hear is the voices of the ignorant, because when you know something about something, you're not quite so bold as that. So that's the sort of baseline of what we're talking about.
Boldness comes from ignorance often, and lack of pause in questioning yourself and wondering if you are right. And many people who know many things and who are probably right and probably right very often seem to hesitate before they make any sort of a bold statement, and that is not good. We need the bold people, the people with the knowledge, to be bolder than the people with no knowledge. That's what we need. And
Ivanka is bringing actual research that she is personally doing to this subject. Yes. So this is evergreen content. You heard it here first. Subscribe.
Evergreen.
Subscribe now. Hi, that's a nice song, isn't it? Is that available anywhere? No. There's some words or a verse. I've been meaning to do words or a verse, but it's been 3 years nearly, and I still haven't got around to it. I've sort of got a vague idea of how I might make it into a song. But it's called One Man Abandons, which I wrote on a day where someone I know was being weird and on Facebook and saying he was going to quit Facebook, and I was thinking, this doesn't work like that, does it? And then that's the song, and that's the song that it's become the brand of our podcast. How are you, Ivanka?
I'm well. I'm very. I am. I am well.
Very well.
I'm well. I'm not sure. I don't know. I went out paddleboarding this morning. This morning was what we call around these parts a bonanza. So if nothing else on this podcast, you will learn a few Dalmatian phrases. A bonanza is when the sea is so still and crystal clear, you can see down to the very bottom of the sea. And it's like gliding on ice on a lake. It's beautiful. unfortunately, for some reason, I left my beautiful paddleboard experience with Floyd the dog, who also enjoyed himself, and then got home, and I just feel a bit low today, Michael, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Very annoying. Not entirely sure why. Maybe it's just one of them days. But I also think that. But I did get energised when we were talking about what we were going to talk about, trying to decide with that usual high levels of prep, planning and research, what we're going to talk about today. So I do feel like I have some things to contribute in that regard.
Good. And in regards to the emergency that prevented last week's podcast, is everything okay there?
Yes. The small child was ill last week, and she's so rarely ill, and she was so not very well. She got somehow managed to get heat stroke, not under parental supervision, I'd hasten to add. But then I suppose one is always responsible for one's child, wherever it is. So, yes, anyway, the child overheated and then was not well and needed attention and love. Do you know what happened to her the day before yesterday?
No.
She got stung by 5 bees at the same time.
What?
Poor child.
How is this possible?
I don't know. She went out for a walk with her father.
Right.
And he was walking ahead, because our general logic is if there is snake, spiders, web, whatever, the parent gets bitten.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of them must have disturbed some. 5. She did. I mean, she's a very robust child, I have to say. Like, she does fall over and she's not that, but she sort of like shakes it off or comes for a quick cry and then goes back. And she's totally understandably,
I can't even,
screamed. And then I thought to high heaven, which I thought was entirely justified. So we did ice, antihistamine cream, cracked open the Calpol, which she never gets given, so it was a brand new bottle that I can't remember what I bought.
Popular child opioid, Calpol.
It's paracetamol. It's paracetamol. Gave her paracetamol and ice cream.
Ice cream. Well, I mean, that sounds terrifying and horrific.
I cannot imagine 5. This has to be, and is, I'm sure, her first experience of real pain. Do you know, like she's fallen over, bumped herself. But she's just never ill. Touch wood. She's not had sore throat. She's not had earache. She's not had toothache. She's not had, like not broken anything. Again, I'm touching all the wood in the world, holding on to a tree. But yes, so I'm kind of.
Well, I would recommend to a child to have that level of pain in response to an observable thing happening rather than just like randomly coming on and intensifying and you can't do anything about it. It's like that's a different sort of thing. But so I'm glad she's like, okay, avoid bees. I can do that.
Do that. She doesn't seem to be particularly scarred. Our garden is quite insect infested, so she's still not running away from bees and wasps frantically, so that's good. I was a bit concerned. No, we did take her back for a walk in a similar area, and it's just so that she wouldn't I think she's just associating it with ice cream now rather than pain. If that happens, I get ice cream. Cool. Anyway, there you go. So, how are you, Michael?
How am I? I am ups and downs. I'm in a good mood because my numbers went up by 7% this morning, and rather than down as it has been for the last few weeks. I'm allowed to check once a week, and it has a slightly gross impact on my mood. I woke up really early this morning. I'm coming up to my 12-month, and I'm starting my 12-month review of my quitting contracting thing. So I've been pulling some data together and writing some sort of draft blog post and stuff like that. And today I was like, okay, let's put what project. I figured out what project how the project's correlated with the mood ratings, and been looking at that. But I just got up at 5:30 this morning and started fiddling with that sort of stuff. But then since then, I saw my numbers, I was like, yay! And then now I'm like, I'm good. I'm very excited that I've got a haircut booked for tomorrow. It's going to be the best haircut I've ever experienced. I cannot wait. So, expertise paralysis.
Expertise paralysis.
We can start. Should we start? Like what? So, what you've been doing some research, and this came out of that.
I've done for the last couple of years. As the regular listeners will know, I'm a user researcher by day. So one of the things I do is interview lots of people, and I've been quite fortunate in the last couple of years to have worked on a couple of projects at least where expert academic information needs to be assimilated by the public, or particularly policymakers. And the projects have been around how to accelerate that, how to increase influence. So that's one thing. And then separately, I've been working with an academic friend of mine who has got some very interesting research around how you can use creative practice, and how creative practices and collaboration make transformation easier, make change easier to accept, and make it happen. And one of her
so you mean like the sort of iteration and that kind of thing, and
just like, so I mean, in her world, it's like the way her starting point is that the amount of transformation that is required for climate change is scarily huge. So anybody who's thought about it can be put off. The actual amount of work required, it's like, no more mangoes for breakfast, the school system, what car I drive, the mortgage I fought so hard to get, the pay rate, all of that could be gone. And I can't think about it, so I don't want to think about it, so I'm going to do nothing. And, I'm just going to carry on recycling. And for sort of bigger scale transformation and thinking, change can happen, but it's much the way I'm interpreting her research is it's much more easily done in a creative, collaborative setting. So if you apply your brain to something like becoming the friends of X woodland, the very act of coming together with people to work on a thing is in itself transformative.
Right. So not just the process, but just the simple collaboration itself.
So the fact that you and I have met pretty much every Friday for coming up to 25 years. 25 years. Means
25,000 episodes.
Means that we are like a micro version. And both of us almost certainly have in that time developed our thinking around things. We've changed certain behaviours. Absolutely, I have. I know you have. I recognise that you have. And it's like there's things that we do, that we examine, that just that thing, that regularly getting together with a common idea is helpful. So what I'm trying to work with her, I'm trying to help, or what I'm trying to work out from reading the academic side of the work is how to translate that into real life and get more people doing it. And this is where my expertise paralysis definition comes from. It's like, just because you don't know yet if you're completely right or right enough, or that the theory could be applied to everyone, everywhere, no matter what, doesn't mean we shouldn't start doing it necessarily.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's how right do you need to be? So sort of, and this happens, I think, rightly, of course. You can't go, in any sort of academic endeavour, in any kind of scientific exploration, we don't want people going, hey, I just tested a thing and turns out MMR vaccine gives kids autism, we're making up. We don't want that. That is wrong and bad. But
especially when you see how long that sticks around for.
Yeah.
Kanye this week he says vaccines are the mark of the devil or something, and he's running for president, and it's like
that is phenomenal, that the concept.
It's incredible. Just because one debunked paper that was widely published is just undermining the health of everyone. Right. Sorry, which is probably why one reason academics are scared to publish something that they're not sure about.
Or that they haven't proved beyond any doubt, or that they don't know the exact caveats that need to apply yet. So yes, this works if X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But the problem is that for the rest of us, and this is, so I've done work with the academic institutes, well, actually, sort of a bit meta, but it's like academics about education. So this education technology project and there's this constant sort of, there's this this range of people who are studying a thing and learning things and trying to work out how convinced they are by their research and their peers' research and how robust their methods are. And then you've got people who are having to make a decision today on something. And it's like
just people who have a press conference today and have to say something. Sometimes it's like it's a weird, like completely different, like cadence. I think of it like even like I was thinking about that, like in terms of my failure to ever get my record deal or whatever. Like just then look at the that Queen film. Have you seen that, the Bohemian Rhapsody? It's all right, but there's this thing where like just the guy, Freddie comes into the office of the guy and he's just like, oh yeah, this guy needs someone to work with, can you do that? Things that happen on this cadence of the people who are committed already to something or other, I guess. I'm just trying to think, does that connect? But I'm just thinking in terms of politicians have a press conference where they have to think of something to talk about. We have a podcast where we have to think of something to talk about every week. And it's like if we waited until we had some concept before we recorded a podcast, we'd have 3 episodes. But because we sort of start from, okay, well, this time is allocated to recording the podcast. So ideally have something available ahead of time. But but it does lead to a different sort of output.
It does.
Which is a little bit more, that sort of rushed thing sometimes. But like, meanwhile, the stuff that you've been working really hard on, like never sees the light of day because you're kind of waiting for it to get to that. And that's the paralysis. That's the expertise paralysis.
And I think it works on a there's like on a micro level it works, and then it works on this sort of broader level. Like people doing interesting research into things to do with climate change today. Yeah. We don't have time. We don't have a 10 to 15 year academic cycle for them to be absolutely certain that they are absolutely right. Like we need to start filtering that info. And maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's sort of just there seems to be this sort of... maybe it's not about rightness either. Maybe it's about confidence to start talking about it. So it's like it's presented as a consecutive set of events. First, I do all this research, and then I start talking about it. But actually, if you want a message to be received, you want to be talking about it like you want it to land, so you need to start talking about it as you're working on it. It's just as important to start planting the seeds and get the information out there ahead of time, so that when you come in with the findings, people are like, oh yeah, that thing. It's like when you've got a really good account manager in an agency, there's no big surprise for the client at the end. Yeah. Because your account manager has worked with them so well that you just walk in and go present. They go, oh yeah, it's brilliant, it's exactly what I wanted.
But the same with like what I'm having to do is this PR thing, like how I'm having to promote the things I'm making, like, and then everything said, like I should have started promoting it when I started working on it, rather than kind of waiting until I had a product, and then you take people along for the journey, and that's like you can't just expect to finish something, put it out there, and for anyone to notice it. Like, because you have to sort of be taking them along that whole journey. But speaking of like climate change and like doing something and having the confidence to sort of follow through on an idea, like sooner rather than later. And there's this aspect of like at some point your hand is just forced. So it's like you don't want it to get to desperation, like before you try something. But this is what happens when you have this fear of disrupting the present stability, or like what semblance of stability there is, because as soon as you make a change to something, that's like suddenly businesses and everything that is built on this kind of like predictability is in danger, and the new normal has to emerge. Following this, it's all very clear that this is happening at the moment. But I was just going to say, like, we started watching the film Snowpiercer last night. Having been watching the mediocre-ish Netflix series of Snowpiercer, we were watching the is that his name? Bong Joon-ho, starring Chris Evans. But it's set in the future, and they're all in this train that's spinning around the frozen Earth. But the start of that film is they freeze the Earth because it's a climate change measure where they kind of put this stuff in the sky that's going to like bring the temperature of the planet down a bit, but instead of just like bringing it back down to a manageable level, it makes it kills all life on the planet and makes it completely uninhabitable. And the only people that survive are on this train. I don't know, it's a weird thing that it's more about like, and it's another one of these like class divide commentaries, like Parasite. So I think it came from like first class, second class, third class. Can we have a reason to make this the whole world? And that's kind of but you can see people, that's the fear in a nutshell right there. Like, we're going to spray this stuff into the atmosphere to fight climate change and the planet is going to get destroyed forever.
Yeah.
But then that sort of like connects to me with that David McCandless visualization about the nuclear warheads aren't really enough to destroy the planet, and maybe we overestimate our ability to immediately things up the other way.
Yeah, and I think there's also scales of this. It's like so there's a few people I've been interviewing as part of this research, and it's like one of the things I'm talking to them about is arguing with people on the internet. So the question is, the scenario is you've seen somebody has posted something on Facebook that is blatantly untrue. And what are you gonna do about it? And then there's various responses, and I think in the most but largely people who know there's this reluctance to sort of, they're like, well, I know that's wrong. However, I'm not sure that I could argue that it's wrong, that I have all the correct data points lined up. And if somebody challenged me on this particular area, I'm not sure I know enough, so I'm going to go and buy a book or 3 books. I'm going to read up a bit more about it until I'm sufficiently expert that I feel like I've got all the arguments lined up to be able to go ready. And I think, there's a point at which, if somebody's posted up something, is this spelt right? Like, there's a point at which you can go, I don't need to look it up in a dictionary. I know, yes, you're good. You can post that. There's like this degrees and scales of knowledge. As a person, it seems to me to be the person sharing the blatant untruth is not pausing to question their knowledge.
I think I'm going to put on the thumbnail of this episode, not that anyone can see the thumbnail anywhere, but I thought maybe overcoming expertise paralysis is the subject. And to overcome it, you just have to jump in and trust your judgment. And like, if you're just going to go and read a book, and then the person that is posting stuff is going to have posted 10 other bullshit things in the meantime, and you're not going to have responded to any of them because you've got to buy a book for each new one, because they have that luxury of just not thinking about it, so they can just post a load of nonsense up. So really, you sort of like have to go, instead of can I 100% defend an argument against someone that is able to nitpick any single thing to do with my argument, am I as capable of thinking on my feet as this person who has just posted this nonsense on Facebook? And people need to, and that's just sort of turns into a self-confidence thing. Like, is it just a fact of, and are men better at saying their opinions as facts? I've heard this.
I've heard that it is true. I'm going to give you an example, though, because I've got something that I sort of would argue against myself as well on this. So given the vaccine, the MMR example, given the example of, let's say, fracking, which I would argue against from a point of view of, never mind the fact that we don't need any more gas and oil, and that's not where we should be investing our time and energy. But also we're from an engineering science point of view also quite good at kicking a cat problem down the road. So it's like, well, we're going to blow this bit up, but when we poison the water, and then we'll clean up the water, and then when we've got the sludge from the cleaned up water, and then we're quite good at not thinking through all the consequences. So there is that. So I would argue against myself here that yes, you do need to pause and be right. But there's also there are examples where a selection of a collection, a group of experts questioning something together can shrink the time. So, for example, I follow this woman on Twitter called Trisha. I don't know how to pronounce her surname. Trisha Greener. Green, Halgh. I follow this woman on Twitter who is a professor of primary care at the University of Oxford, right? So she is Greenhalgh. Is that how we're going to say?
Greenhalgh.
Exactly. So I follow this woman who's a professor of primary care at the University of Oxford, and she's been talking about, she turns up on the telly talking about COVID, but I've been following her through COVID talking about masks, and she'll sort of tweet, we've had a meeting today, there were 20 of us, we're all doctors, we're all used to looking at, based on the data we have today, we favour masks. There is not sufficient empirical evidence to say yes forever, but on the balance of facts, this is what we do. And I think it's those practices, so that kind of like on a world level, we need more of that. But on a personal level, we also need people to who know what they're talking about to be more bold.
Speak up.
Speak up.
Well, here's, we haven't mentioned the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is kind of what this is. It's the, and I think that's probably most acute in leaders because they have to sort of have a bird's eye view of a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different things. So they can't become experts. They can't. So most of the things that they're talking about, they will have never gone into the sort of like the valley of the Dunning-Kruger effect where they realize how little they know. And obviously, again, nowhere is this clearer than with Trump. But like with any like boss, they'll sort of like say that it's almost like goes with the job that you're going to be before that Dunning-Kruger effect threshold where you realise how little you know. But they're the people making all the decisions. But they're also the people kind of going, oh, well, they're overconfident in their own ignorance at the same time. So they're like, oh, I don't think that sounds like a good idea. Based on what? Like,
I think it's based on they don't like the idea. It's like, that doesn't sound like a good idea because I don't like it, because it's going to affect me, because it sounds horrible. And this version of the truth that is not true sounds nicer. Yeah, COVID is a conspiracy, load of bollocks. It's not real. It's not real.
That's fine. I don't have to change my bet. I didn't get to this state. I didn't get here in life. I didn't get this far in life without trusting my gut. That's my impression of Donald Trump or Boris Johnson. No. I'm the Prime Minister now. I think my judgment carries some weight.
There's one woman I interviewed this week. She was like just so clever and young and full of knowledge, just full of analytical knowledge. And she was so full of imposter syndrome. I was like, this is a user research session. I can't give you a pep talk now, but if I was meeting her in a lab and I was walking out the door with her, I'd be like, now listen, sunshine. And perhaps like working in digital stuff, we've got so used to like, oh, if we publish it and it's got a mistake, we'll just fix it. It's just like, it's just so easy. And the fact that it just doesn't stay, even if it's really, really, really good on the day you publish it, it doesn't stay good.
It doesn't stay good.
It does not stay good. It decays so quickly and just like, it was really good 6 months ago. Now, shit.
Yeah, but you say that, but like the amount of, and I'm not an architect, I'm not building physical structures, I'm not a climate change, expert trying to find ways to stop the entire planet from turning into a flaming fireball. Like, that's tautological there, but I have to say, like, the amount of stress I have felt being the one person responsible for shipping an app that has no QA, has no other people working on it or looking at it. that there may be up to 10 days of time before I can put a fix in if I make a stupid mistake, if I miss something. And I have to empathise with the people doing something actually important when all that's really at stake is the brand identity, or like some people might put some bad reviews in, and like, that may undercut the income for 1 month of. But like, it's terrifying and so stressful. Like, so I can understand it.
I think that's an argument to being in a gang, like, you know. But I think academia particularly takes the peer reviewed. The peer reviewed has a single purpose, but there are no peers who are marketeers or comms people or, you know, somebody like with my friend's papers. I was like, you know, what should a CEO of a design agency do with this information? How do they translate it into their work? And I think it's about what, you know, in your scenario, for example, if you had, it doesn't have to be somebody with the same expertise as you, but if you weren't doing it entirely on your own, there is an ability you could accelerate some of those things for sure. And I know in your case it's, you know, but I think it's an argument for why sharing the burden will shortcut things and potentially catch much. That's why, you know, when we do user research, everyone goes, qual data, but, you know, putting 5 people in front of a product will catch 80-90% of the problems, which is frankly as many as you're ever going to fix anyway. You know what I mean? Let's be honest about this.
Responsibility is a big question here, because in a way, like, traditionally, like, the truth trumps any human authority, and so those people that are in theory more connected to the truth, e.g. the researchers in a particular subject around climate change, or priests, you know, they sort of sit above the prime minister, above the president in a way, because you can't argue with it. If someone's got access to the truth and they know it, then they just that is a kind of power that transcends any human authority. Donald Trump has thrown that whole paradigm in the toilet. You know, we're seeing people realizing that model isn't necessary anymore, and I was hoping you'd sort of look more interested in this.
I am really interested in this. Sorry. No, I'm waiting to talk. No, I think your priest versus scientist model is a really good one, because I think there's this weird thing where, even in the olden days, the king would listen to the priest. The priest had the authority to, bring down the word of God, and then the king would go, "Oh, you got me then. I better do what you said then." And they sort of carry this unchallenged authority. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are 70 billion examples of priests getting their heads cut off because they didn't say what the king wanted, but that's aside.
Do you know what? I'm not even sure. I don't know, because if you are God-fearing, you're not going to fuck with the priest. Like, you're not. Like, this is the thing that's... I'm having a hard time right now, but eternal life, come on. You don't fuck with eternal life. Like,
but the scientists, scientists have never attained that level of God... God, a hand of God, not to be questioned, and deliberately almost, because scientists, by their very nature, the very nature of science is to be constantly questioning, isn't it? So therefore, to present themselves in a position where they can't be challenged would be like counter to science, wouldn't it?
Although you do have this sort of, there are, the institutions don't necessarily behave the same way. And I'm just thinking about Game of Thrones, and when Sam goes to the Citadel and they're all stuffy and they won't listen to, they've set in their ways, they've got their beliefs, they won't, like, he's bringing them new information and they're just like explaining it away and going, well, no, that won't be a thing. Oh, no, it hasn't been that for 100 years. Oh, no, it couldn't possibly be the case. And that's definitely something that will happen in an academic institution. People will be sort of a bit full of themselves. But is there a conservatism associated with that sort of institutional thinking that makes it very hard to get anything done or anything new done? I think, as soon as you get all that, the bureaucracy comes into play, it is very hard to move on anything. So, bring on Dominic Cummings and he'll fix everything by bypassing bureaucracy.
But I don't know. But you see, it's a very, very risky business that we're talking about, because how do you work out who has authority? And it's correct that people who know more question themselves more and I saw something on Facebook somebody shared the other day. They were like some sort of it was like playing down COVID, and it was shared and linked to a Swiss institute of something or other. And I sort of read it, was like, this is bullshit. I'm just going to go and have a look at the website. And then it took me a few minutes to prove to myself that the website really was bullshit. But then I was trying to work out how to prove that irrefutably to the person. And I was like, I haven't got time for this. So I just let it go. At a micro level, it's very hard to go into battle against ignorance. And I don't think that's what I'm particularly talking about. But I'm talking about how to increase the actionable nature of academia or academic findings without undermining them, maybe. We don't need Dominic Cummings is also an example of the, what's it called, the Kruger effect.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Dunning-Kruger effect. Because he sort of knows about some things, great, but do you know enough about a wide enough set of things to be confident? It's like another woman I was talking to in the week's headmistress of a school. The schools are finding out about the measures the government's bringing in or releasing at the same time as the rest of us. So they watch the press release that Boris does, and Boris goes, schools are opening next week. And they're like, are they? And then they're like, okay, right. So, and then they have to make plans. And then the parents come in and go, oh, well, we'll help you erect a marquee in the garden so that you can keep the children isolated. And then she's like, they cannot think through all the tiny little bits of things. Like, when does the teacher get to go to the loo in all this? And how, so it's that sort of breadth of knowledge, which I think the way to protect ourselves from making silly, split-second, cocky, overbold decisions by broadening the scope of people querying it.
Yes. I mean, the way I'm thinking about it, I've drawn a little graph.
Oh, good.
We have two sort of opposing forces here, or two different types of behaviour here. One is committed action, so that's like an announcement or something that's got to happen on this date. So that's like a leader committing you to some ill-conceived action, and then you've got to meet that deadline, meet that task, one way or another. And then on the other side of it is this here's my pet, here's my research project, here's my album, here's my app that I'm working on, and I want to make this the best it can possibly be before you reveal it to the world. Yeah. We need to combine those two worlds, and the way to do that is to have a more regular connection between them. So but the problem with so an example I'm thinking of, just because I can see his poster through my window, is Wintergatan, Martin Molin, who's making this marble machine. But every week he makes a YouTube video showing his progress for that week. So he's committed to that action of showing the progress every week. So on the one hand, he's trying to get this machine to be as absolutely perfect as it can be. But on the other hand, he's committed to creating these videos every week. And then there's this, there is a slight kind of fight between, I've got to, the time that it takes to put something good into a video each week will take away from some of that time that you need to make the thing work really well. But you have to choose somewhere on that scale to be. And not on the scale at all, never announcing anything, only ever touching the rest of the world at the point when you've finished your research. That is too far on the wrong side of that curve. Yeah. The other side of it, where the week, you don't need to release something every week, but you can set people's expectations by saying, on this date every month, or there's how sprints work, every 2 weeks we're going to release whatever happens. It's a train. You've got to get your thing on that train. By having something like that, it sort of helps to stabilize the chaos of it a little bit more, because it's not like the one and only time you'll ever try something. Now it's like, okay, we'll try this, and then we'll see how it goes for a couple of weeks, and we'll still be working on the big idea, but then we'll have another opportunity to correct our mistakes. And I think like having some sort of train that is going, that's going to leave the station on this day every month, every year, every day, is a really good discipline for academics and people suffering from expertise paralysis to kind of snap out of that a little bit. Yeah.
Good. I'm happy with that as a suggested way of working. I like it.
Find out where you are on that scale. If you're too far on in your own world scale, then you're not going to achieve anything, however brilliant your idea is or your product or your plan is. Yeah. But also, if you spend too much time in public, you're never going to get this thing finished. I found a lot of energy for this subject.
I do.
After being quite tired to start with.
I was very not in the mood. I was wanting to like not do anything today and go and hide under a duvet type day. Also, I've got a lot of pain in my leg, which is not helping me at all. I might have to stand up for a bit.
I'm going to leave this in the podcast because it shows our point perfectly. Like you were feeling a bit not like doing it, but you were committed. I was committed. I sort of came to the camera this morning going, I don't know anything about this podcast, but just the fact that we have this in. So, there you go. Proof, if proof be need be. Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com and make sure you're subscribed, or do it in the app you're using. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
You can find me at Michael Forrest on Twitter. Go to our links, support our enterprises. There is a Patreon and a Slack channel if you want to get involved in that. Just look underneath, do it. But we hope you're well and weathering these storms and surviving the fresh round of changes to, just as you get stuck into one routine, you got to change it again. Like, the gym's opening again. It might not be the same, though. I don't know what to expect. Maybe I should just not go back and just keep doing what I'm doing. It's going to be okay, everybody. Change is good, albeit terrifying. See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.